Justice Blinded again, also known as Eric. We are going to be broadcasting a Keyforge Adaptive League match today. Adaptive League is it's a league of adaptive games playing Swiss matches in the prelims, and then they're cutting, I think, to top 4. Adaptive, for those of you who do not know, is a format where we both bring our decks. Game 1, we play our own decks. At Game 2, we play each other's decks. If the same deck wins, meaning if the match is split 1-1, what happens is that we take turns bidding chains on who is going to play the deck that won both matches. So the highest chain bid gets to play that deck, but they have to start the match with that many chains. So before we jump into action, I'm just going to show you the decks that we're going to be dealing with today. This is the deck I'll be playing. It's called Lacey, the Tracker of Reference. It's got a couple of different things. The biggest gimmicky thing in the deck is a double Battle Fleet Key Abduction combo in Mars. It's got some stuff to archive to get Mars cards or other cards in archive to get to the Battle Fleet trigger quicker. It's got some stall. It's got Dis, with a couple Charrettes. It's got an Ember Imp, a Snudge, 2 Succubi, a Dominator Bauble, a couple of these Hand of Dis, and the Control the Weak thrown in there as well. So it's got some things, as you can tell. It's mostly just kind of a deck that I bring to adaptive sometimes because I feel like it takes a little bit to get a good feel for it, and that's the best kind of adaptive deck. You want a deck that you're going to understand pretty well, and you're hoping your opponent may not play perfectly the first time around, and so you might sneak out a win that way. This is my opponent's deck that I'll be playing. It's called Ellie Hatebolt of the Dicey Throne Room. Sorry, let me move it so you can actually see under the picture. So it's got a couple of things. It's got a Maverick Tunk in Shadows, which is just kind of funny because it just is a 6/1. The normal benefit to Tunk is that you play a Mars creature and it heals Tunk. However, it doesn't matter here because there are no more Mars. Well, actually, I take it back. I forgot. He has Mars House, so that actually is going to work fine, although it doesn't have the normal synergy of like using Tunk to fight something and then immediately playing a Mars creature. So you can heal Tunk. So Tunk will be kind of floating out there, possibly damage-wise for a turn. It's got 3 Shadow Selves, which is just a lot of protection. A Snack Lifter for artifacts, which is fine. We have some artifacts, but we have no artifacts in our deck that we really, really care about. I mean, we care a little bit about things like Crystal Hive. So that would not be great to steal Crystal Hive, but again, it's not the end of the universe. We don't have any major, like a Dominator Bauble, again, not great to have stolen. Lash, probably be the worst target to have stolen, although Library of the Damned would be bad too. So there's some stuff we got to look out for. He's got a Key Cheat, he's got Fertility Chant and Key Charge, which means he can forge a key in Untamed fairly easily off turn. And he's got Chota, so he's got all the Key Cheats in Untamed. No Hunting Witches, but he does have Witch of the Eye, so the Witch of the Eye, Fertility Chant, Witch of the Eye, and he can protect Witch of the Eye and other high-value targets with these Shadow Selves, and he's got a Dominator, so he's got lots of abilities to protect. He's got Mars combos with these things, so his deck, on average, is probably favored, although it's very interesting. My deck's pretty draw-dependent, so if I hit the Battle Fleet combo, then he'll be potentially dead before he gets off to this massive kind of stuff that's happening. But anyway, let's start the game and let's see what happens. Okay. All right, so we're going to start out with a hand that's kind of interesting. We have 2 Battle Fleets and Combat Pheromones. You usually don't want this sort of opening hand. You want to draw the Battle Fleets 3-4 turns in when you've had a chance to archive a bunch of cards. We do have a sloppy lab work, so we could, in theory, archive a Battle Fleet, discard like a Lash, but we don't really want to be doing that. We really would prefer to get these later, so we're probably going to mull this hand because we just don't want those up front. And this is much better. I mean, it's a little unfortunate because we're probably just discarding 2 hands of Dis on turn 1, but we can control the weak into something, but the control the weak here is a really weird guess, right? The Giant Sloth is kind of a house. I didn't talk about that in my analysis, but Giant Sloth is a rare card, so you don't see it that often, but it's kind of a house if he has any Untamed cards. So controlling the weak into Untamed is not super good here. So we kind of just have to take a guess. I think we just want to just discard a couple of hands of Dis and play Control the Weak for, I don't know, Actually, Shadows, let's see, he has some steel. So Shadows isn't terrible here. Although we'll probably just do Mars. We'll do Mars. That's probably safer. It's really just a complete guess at this point. I could do Untamed on the hopes that he has literally no Untamed cards in hand, but that doesn't seem like a fantastic idea. Because otherwise he's just going to discard an Untamed card, gain 3, and then my Control Weak really has done nothing. He's going to... So he had 3 Mars cards, so that's a little unlucky, although who knows? He could have just as easily had 3 of the other, and, you know, it's not clear. So here, he's going to have to discard a card to use it. I don't think he's going to want to discard a card and then fight with Sloth. I could be wrong, but the play I'm considering here is putting out the 2 Succubi to kind of slow him down a little, although he does have Mother Gun, but there's no straight-up fight that he could do to kill my disc creatures if I do this, other than the Sloth, and he's going to have to burn an Untamed card, which he may choose to do, but I think we want to apply max pressure, and I think that's probably the way to do it here. Okay, that's very good. So ideally, I was going to say, ideally what we want here is to get a hand where we're going to get more Logos cards so we can run out of Logos thing next turn, which is exactly what we're going to do. The Mind Lock will be interesting, although, well, here, what we really want him to do is we really want him to play a card, one of those protector cards, like either a Dominator or, we prefer Shadow Self. And we like it on the flank, although I think that's unlikely. But if he sticks a Shadow Self on the flank, that's going to be very good for us, because then we can Mind Lock, put the Shadow Self next to the Mind Lock, and make it really hard for him to get rid of the Mind Lock, and therefore really hard for him to get the Shadow Self back. So we'd love to see him drop a Shadow Self right next to the Nadi here. So he took Snecklifter. So we made him play Snecklifter when he did not have any other cards. So now we have a decision about what we want to do. I think what we want to do here is probably... Well, so he's likely to call Shadows next turn. The real question is... This is interesting, because this isn't a Mars creature. So none of these have a great deal of utility. I mean, well, either Sloth or Tunk. I think we probably take Tunk, because we make him fight the Mind Lock with something else, although he can just fight it with anything, because this is a 1-power creature, so that's really kind of unfortunate. I'm considering archiving the Mind Lock and discarding this. I think that's not a terrible play, especially since there are 3 Shadow Selves left to come, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to archive the Mind Lock, because we're very likely to see some Shadow Selves, and that's prime targets for this in this matchup. So let's try doing it that way. We're going to play a Tight Mechanic in the middle, because I think he's more likely with this board to get to 6 than we are. We're going to play a Sloppy Lab Work. We're going to archive. It feels really bad to archive a Logos card when I can just archive the Key Abduction, though. I mean, it does... Yeah, I think it's worth it only because he has 3 Shadow Selves in deck. I think that's what we want to do. It's unfortunate, but I think we want to archive that, because I think when he plays a Shadow Self, if we can catch it on a flank, which admittedly is less likely, because if he has enough, he'll dump it around both sides, but... Okay. Well, this is also now interesting, because, well, we could play Key Abduction. We're not going to get a key, but we would be able to get this... Oh, well, that's not Mars, so just this card off the board. It's probably... Key Abduction probably isn't super amazing here. He's going to use the bear, play Nature's Call. Okay, so he's going to pop... He's probably going to make our decision for us. So depending upon what he pops to hand, what he pops to our hand will depend on... Okay, so he's pretty much going to make our call for us, because now we're probably just going to choose Dis and put the 2 Disc creatures back out, because he's got 2 Shadows, 1 Mars, and 1 Untamed creature. So he doesn't have a lot that's going to be a problem. Well, okay. So the other option is we could play a Mother on the left, cover up the Titan mechanic so he doesn't forge. We could then use the Archaeologist to archive one of these cards and then phase shift in something like an Ember Imp. Although we kind of want to phase shift in a Dominator because we'd like to protect the Ember Imp. That might be best. Yeah, let's do it that way. So let's play Logos. Do I want to Mind Lock? No, not, well, actually, yeah, I think I do. Because I think I want to play a Mind Lock here, phase shift in a Dominator, play Mother over here, and so Mind Lock is protected. I think that's what I want to do, yeah. So let's do that. Let's play a Mind Lock to the left. Yeah. I think I want to take the Sloth, because I think this is too dangerous. So we're going to take the Sloth. We're going to put the Sloth over here. Then we're going to phase shift in a Dominator to the left to protect the Mind Lock. It's not the best protection, but it still allows me to get max value out of this. I'm going to play Mother on the... Doesn't particularly matter here, but I think I might have... I want these things to be on the left of the Dominator. So I'm going to play Mother over here, so it kind of does matter. I'm going to use the... Oh, that archives a card from the... Well, that's interesting. I could archive... I actually like archiving Control the Weak here. It's a very useful card. I could archive a Hand of Dis, but I mean, just having that utility seems very good. And then these are both elusive, no point fighting, so we'll just reap here. And that'll be the end of that turn. Alright, so this is actually going reasonably well for this matchup. And unless something extremely weird happens next turn, we're going to have a very interesting Dis turn. And we're also going to have some choices, right? Because you can make a case... Some cases better than others. But you can make a case for putting any of these Dis creatures in the protected slot here. Snudge is probably the winner because that does the most damage to them, but Ember Imp is a close second. And I may change that decision by the time it gets to be my turn. I'm not positive. But Ember Imp does a lot of work if I can keep it protected. What did he do? A Poison Wave. Okay, well that's actually fantastic that he played it then, because we really don't want the Poison Wave to come out when I have all this on the board. Poison Wave is one of the few ways he could get to an Ember Imp behind a Dominator with using his deck. So he's going to play Silvertooth. Reap. Yeah, that's fine. Snecklifter, still no targets. How did he get it back? I must have missed something. Did he Nature's Call Snecklifter to his hand? I think he did. Yeah, he did. Okay. All right. So these aren't major threats. They're just going to reap. So I think what we actually want to do is we want to put Snudge. If I control the weak into Shadows, he's unlikely to have a lot of Shadows creatures. So protecting Ember Imp next turn is not a high priority. Long term it may be, but he can get to this long term. So the next option is, what do I want to protect? I think I want to protect a Snudge, because reaping with Snudge and popping stuff to hand is super powerful. Fighting with Snudge and popping stuff to hand is super powerful. Really, any option is good. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do this. We're going to take the Control the Weak. We're going to play... Yeah, we'll play it on the left. We're basically just going to be dumping a bunch of high-value targets on the board, and we're going to make him make decisions about how he responds. So he's going to get his key now, and now things get super interesting, because now we have double Battlefleet, Key Abduction, and 2 other Mars cards. So we could... And then, of course, our draw remaining. We've got 5 Mars cards remaining in deck. So if we Battlefleet for 4 and get nothing, then that would leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 cards left. And then Battlefleet for 3. I mean, the odds of us getting literally blanked are very low. So this is kind of an inflection point. So he purged Succubus. Okay, that's fine. Played Pawn, sacrifice Silvertooth, and he's going to kill the Ember Imp and Succubus, probably. Yep. So that was, it turns out, a very fortunate draw for him that he drew. He played all those cards, and he either held these cards, which probably isn't a great play, or he specifically drew Oublet and Pawn Sacrifice, which is very unlucky for us, but, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. So now we got to make a decision. Options include just doing something with this and playing Lab Work. It seems wrong. That's 100% wrong. So we just got to start drawing some cards. So let's draw some cards. First, we'll move the stun from this. Then we'll play Battlefleet. And we will reveal 4 cards, hopefully drawing more Mars cards. But of course we don't. Still, we want to play the second Battlefleet here because we are going to get even more cards in hand. And now we're at 5 cards. So what happens if we play Key Abduction? Well, Key Abduction is going to cost, there's nothing that increases the cost of our key. So Key Abduction is going to cost 6 plus 9, so 15. We have 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're going to get a key if we play Key Abduction. So that's definitely the right play here. So we'll play Key Abduction. We'll forge a key. We will go back and protect Snudge. And we have the extra added bonus since Mechanic is now on a flank. We can play 2 Mars artifacts, gaining 2 Amber. And now we're actually at check. I don't think we'll stay there, but we are at check. The fun thing is, this check is not affected by Ritual. Ritual Ballads can't do anything about this check. So now he's probably going to be dumping some combo pieces on board for Mars. And we're going to have to make some decisions next turn. But we do have a decent Dis turn set up. Unless he just blows Snudge out, which is probably what's about to happen. Because this isn't Shadow Self. That's why Shadow Self is in many cases so much better than this Dominator. Obviously, I just don't have Shadows in the deck. But Shadow Self is so much better because it will absorb the damage and prevent things like Mother Gun. So he's going to John Smith, Squawker. Okay, so he's going to ready Dominator, undo the stun. Okay. Again, that's fine. Biomatrix backup. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this deck is just kind of not a good matchup for us here. But we do have some things that we can do. So the Charette play here, assuming, well, let's look. Let's make sure I want to play. Yeah, I kind of have to play Dis here. It's the only way I can keep him off a key next turn, and him getting to 2 keys is too dangerous right now with this Mars stuff on board, although he could just use the Mars stuff next turn. But I really need to get Lash on the table, because Lash is perhaps one of my only outs in coming turns. So I think what I want to do here is I want to... Now, it's tempting to put the Charette here, right? I'm going to call this. It's tempting to put the Charette here under cover. But if I do that, the Mechanic remains out in the open on a flank, and he has 8 Amber. So the Charette will capture 3, but then he'll be to 5 and I'll make a key. So the Charette doesn't really do work there. So I have to put the Charette out in the open, leaving it vulnerable to attack. He doesn't have a lot of, like, he could... It's surprising that he didn't exhaust this stun that he reaped instead of exhausting the stun. I guess he doesn't know that I specifically have Charette, obviously, but that's very fortunate for us because he's probably going to exhaust the stun, reap, Dominator, kill Charette if he calls Mars next turn. But this at least makes him do something responsively to... Nope, definitely not. Responsibly to the Charette. I think it's worthwhile here because I don't have a lot of other Mars cards in deck. Well, actually I have 5. But I still think it's worth it here to pop one of these Combat Pheromones to use the Dominator to exhaust the stun on Dominator. Or to remove the stun on Dominator. Because there are scenarios next turn where Dominator can be used as a piece to fight other Dominator if Dominator is taking damage from hitting this, or trying to kill Sloth, or it just could get used. But if I don't do this now, I'm not going to likely be able to use that next turn. So we'll pass turn. We'll see what happens. Oh, okay. So we got the other Charette, which is interesting. Poison Wave is pretty interesting here, although, again, I don't think I want to call Mars just to play Poison Wave. That seems particularly bad. Because I'm just going to play Poison Wave and do something with Dominator. That's not enough. I can call call Dis. I keep saying Untamed because he's got Untamed. I could call Dis, Charette Lash. That probably holds him off for another turn unless he does something obscene on this turn. Charette Lash, Dominator on, and this is another reason why we used the Combat Pheromones last turn, because we knew we had Dominator. Well, or he could just dump all the artifacts back to hand. That's a bit of a pain, so he's probably now going to Giant Sloth and gain 3, which is a problem. But we can put a second Shred under protection. That's a big swing, because these things are what's going to potentially hold him off long enough to win, although I think it's unlikely based on this outlay. But we'll see. He did call Untamed. And these are fairly premium Dis artifacts. So if he was holding Grasping Vines, I don't know what he would have been, but if he was, that worked out well. If he was not holding Grasping Vines, then it's not. And of course, in this matchup, when making a mental note of myself, okay, so we just key cheated. So making a mental note for next turn, next game, when I have to play this deck and he's playing Lacey, I have to be very careful not to bounce stuff to hand like Grasping Vines when I haven't seen the Key Abduction yet. Because if I do that, I may be aiding him into a Key Abduction. Alright, so he's playing Witch of the Eye, which is a major threat because he has a key charge that I haven't seen. I wouldn't be surprised if the key charge was the last card in hand that he had before he... actually, I would be surprised if he was doing it right, because he still could have the key charge. But I think what I would probably do if I were him is I would not hold the key charge because you have a Witch of the Eye. So we have a lot of objectives here. I think we have to go back to... Dis. I think we have to fight the Witch of the Eye, because we really have to have that off the board. And then play Charette, and then dump all the rest of our Dis stuff on board. I mean, it's unfortunate because he's going to be opening up with a lot of stuff here, but we really got to hope that we're able to get to something like this draw, and then start reaping with Dominator to blow stuff off the board. But as of right now, I think the correct play is to remove this from board, to play another Charette undercover, to play all these artifacts back again, and that Grasping Vines was such a huge play in this matchup. I don't think we want to use Pheromones here because we're not... Well, hold on. So what does Pheromones do? We could swing into this Dominator, which doesn't kill either. It's not a great play. We could kill the Giant Sloth, which actually is not that bad, because if we kill the Giant Sloth, then he can't Amber Rush us and Key. Yeah, I think the Giant Sloth is a huge threat because we haven't seen Key Charge yet. It's likely in his hand. It could be here. So we really got to get rid of something that can get that much Amber. Of course, he can do this in Mars, but if he does it in Mars, he can't Key Cheat, and we'll have another turn. So I think what we have to do here is we have to take this, and we have to fight and get the Sloth off the board. We don't love it, but I think it's the right play here. I think the Sloth is the biggest danger, because other than Lash, we've already played both our Charettes. We don't have a great deal of Amber denial in the immediate future. In the coming hands, we're going to have... Mind Warper helps a little, but it's not enough. Like, we have to stop him from key cheating. So he's probably 2 turns away from check, simply because this is already stunned. We'll see. Ammonia Clouds is interesting here if I get a chance to play it next turn, although I don't think I want to for many reasons. It does kill this, and that, although he'll probably ready that. So it kills this, and this, and that, and that, and that, but it blows this charrette off the board, which gives him Amber, which is like a high priority reason. So he archives a Shadow Self. Okay, so that's coming down soon. And now the Ammonia Clouds no longer does the thing. This is just super tough. Plus, if we call... Well, we could call Logos Phase Shift into Ammonia Clouds. That's kind of interesting. Although I don't think we love that play, because then it puts the mechanic on the flank, and... Well... This is just so unfortunate. This is just a very, very unlucky draw to be stuck with 2 lab works at the end here with an all Logos hand. I guess you could make an argument last turn we should have gone here. But, well, see, well, now we basically can't play Ammonia Clouds because he put damage on Charrette. So if I play Ammonia Clouds, both Charrettes die. He gets 6 Amber, and then I pretty much lose, which is why he just played Ammonia Clouds. So now I kind of have to concede, I think. I was about to say I could play Lash, but the problem is I have no other Dis runouts to... I have no other Dis runouts that can stop him from that, and... Yeah, I can't fight with that. Doesn't come into play ready. Phase shift, I'm just done. Not a good matchup for this deck, unfortunately. Plus, he got extremely... not extremely. He got above average lucky when he hit a couple of the key... Like, the time... When he time walked me, it's a term for Magic, basically. Stalled me from playing out these artifacts and using them the next turn. I just pretty much lose. So now I have to import his deck. Nope, that's my deck. I have to import his deck. Okay, so we saw what his deck does. Hate Bolt does a lot of good things, but it's going to be interesting because it's one of the problem with playing a deck. There are many problems, but the problem with playing a deck like Lacey in Adaptive, it's good because it's kind of a unique feel, but it's a little bit bad because these draw dependent decks that have a lower consistency factor, are the decks that have a lower consistency factor. If you get a bad draw when you get the deck, and then you hand the deck over and it gets a great draw, like if he starts out with 5 Logos cards and some lab work stuff, and he archives a bunch of Mars, and then he just goes off with the Battlefleet Key Abduction combo, then we lose, and a large percentage of the loss, I'm certainly not saying I haven't made mistakes, but a large percentage of the loss is just horrific draws. So this is an interesting opening hand. I don't know that I want a hand like with Grasping Vines in the opening hand. Bait and Switch is bad in opening hand. Fertility Shan is fine, but not amazing when you don't have a lot of good follow-ups. So I think I'm going to mull this and feel pretty good about it. Because I can drop several things on board. So we'll see what he does. Yeah, so the other problem is you could start out with hands like this. But we do have a Snack Lifter in our deck, so we're going to do... God, do we really want to hold Oblette? There's so much in my deck, right? There's so much in my deck that he's playing. That, well, there's a fair amount, let's say. So Snudge, Succubus, there are targets in terms of Oblette. Mind Lock is a super good target for Oublet. Bat Drone. I just don't think we can afford to hold Oublet in hand. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to play Pawn Sacrifice, getting rid of that. We're going to discard Oublet, play Shadow Self, and we'll play a Naughty under Shadow Self. Interesting thing, the one thing about last matchup that did surprise me, we didn't see a Shadow Self the entire matchup until he archived it at the very end. So there's definitely stuff that could happen. And here's the bad scenario I was talking about, where he happens to get a grip full of Logos cards, and he's able to archive stuff. He's going to archive stuff towards the combo. So there's just not a lot I can do about that. The things I can do include... oh, that is a Shadows card. Okay, so we'll do that again. We'll play Tunk to the right here. We'll play a Shadow Self. I probably should have stuck this in here, but we'll play a Shadow Self to the right of Tunk, and then we'll play this here. And so we'll use this to steal. And the Tunk is going to be kind of a good fighting card, because if I can use Tunk to basically just board wipe, or not board wipe, just to take out individual threats, because Tunk will get the damage absorbed by Shadow Self. So basically Tunk hits for 6 at least once for free, unless something weird happens. So he's calling Mars. I wonder if he's going to try to do some Battlefleet stuff, because he archived 2 cards. This is usually, unless you're forced into it, this is usually not an amazing call with Lacey, in my experience with this deck, to call Mars if you don't have like a huge grip of cards with Battlefleet right now, because you only have 2 cards in archive. He also didn't take the archive, which means he doesn't have Battlefleet, or he's just going to play like a low-level Mars turn and dump a bunch of things on the board. Yeah, this is actually very good for us that we didn't see a Battlefleet at the beginning of that turn. It's even better that we didn't see anything out of archive. So that's a very fortunate development for us. Question is, what did he play on Type Mechanic? Red Planet Ray Gun. Okay, that's fine. We can just kill Type Mechanic with Shadows, which I think is probably the right play. The downside of playing, well... So let's do the math here. If I play... Yeah, I think this is right. I think it's right to play Untamed. Because we play Untamed, we play Full Moon, we play Nocturnal Maneuvers, exhausting both of those. We play Nature's Call, and then we're going to be forced to we'll pop these 2 back to hand. Actually, Full Moon, Nocturnal Maneuvers gets us to 5. No, that doesn't work. So I have to play Nature's Call first. I was going to bounce Chota, then replay Chota, but that doesn't work. So I'll just bounce like I think I'll bounce Naughty. Because then Tunk gets surrounded by Shadow Self, and Tunk can just... No, then I think it actually double damages. Okay, so we're going to do this. So we're going to play Nocturnal Maneuvers. We're going to exhaust both of these creatures. We're going to play Full Moon. We're going to play Nature's Call. We're going to pop these 2 to hand, and we'll pop Silvertooth because he comes in ready. And then we'll play Chota on the right-hand side. That works because I have the Key Charge, or sorry, the Full Moon active. We're going to discard Key Charge. We're not holding this card for forever. Plus, there's a Witch of an Eye waiting later, which we can reserve a spot for over here. And that's a fine turn, I think, because we put him back a lot. Now, the one downside to what we've done is that we bounced 2 cards to hand. So if for some reason he drew into a Battlefleet, we have very good reason to believe that these are not Mars cards, because he would have pulled them into hand when he started the turn, right? He would have pulled the archive into hand, probably, and played Mars cards, unless he specifically archived Battlefleet or Key Abduction and didn't want to play those on the turn. But I think these are non-Mars cards. They're probably Logos cards. We'll see if he takes the archive. No, so they're not. So I don't know what he's doing with these. It could be discards. He's face-shifting into a Lash. Face shifting into something else, into Charette. which is unfortunate because it does nothing. So I don't know what exactly he's doing. I don't think these... I think he might have just archived Key Abduction and tried to play it in a very weird way. I don't... There's not a lot that makes sense that's in archive. I'm trying to think. But it is what it is. So we made our keys cheaper. And he did that. I think the play here is Poison Wave worth it? So if Poison Wave hits, this takes 4 damage, this takes 6 damage. And then I only put 2 damage on each of those. All of that is in exchange for 1 amber. I don't know that that is a worthwhile trade. I think instead what I want to do, since... Oh, it doesn't... They didn't errata it, so it doesn't... So it does say Bars creatures. I still think I want to fight the Titan mechanic. I'll take the 6 damage here for killing the Titan mechanic. That's fine. So let's do that. Let's first discard Poison Wave. I don't want to play that card. Then we're going to fight and kill the Titan mechanic. Then we're going to reap here. We're going to reap here. No, we're going to use an action there to steal 1. Then we're going to reap here. Then we're going to play Silvertooth on the right because there's a lot of stuff in this deck I'd like to protect over here. We're just going to come in and reap with Silvertooth. And we're going to sit back, and here's one of those cards that I want to put over here, Witch of the Eye. We're going to sit back and sit on our massive board advantage currently and see what he does. The nice thing about this position is that even if he drew like a miracle hand, like he drew into 6 Mars cards, including both battle fleets and a Key Abduction, the very worst thing that he could do is to forge 2 keys this turn. Or, sorry, forge 1 key. Draw a bunch of cards, forge 1 key, unless he... No, I don't think the math works for him to draw the whole deck. So he did archive some Mars cards, so what probably he did was he probably tried to archive Battle Fleet, or just Key Abduction. It would have to be Key Abduction in one other card. Because if he archived the Battle Fleet and a Key Abduction, and then dropped 3 more Mars cards, but not playing those cards, he was strictly playing for the combo, which is probably wrong in that scenario a few turns ago. But I'm not positive what he did. I'm kind of curious. See if we can find that out later. So he is drawing a whole bunch of cards, right? I mean, this is the downside of he's drawn 2 battle fleets. He can play Key Abduction. Now, ironically, this isn't a Mars creature, so it doesn't do anything. So he didn't play Key Abduction. So what that almost certainly means is he does not have Key Abduction in hand. So Key Abduction is here, which is unlucky for him. But even in this scenario, Key Abduction only gets him 1 key, and then that's it. And then he just dumps a bunch of other Mars cards on table. You want to be playing that combo later in the game because you want to have enough stuff on the board or purged or whatever where you're pulling back the Key Abduction on the draw with the second battle fleet. So he is going to... What did he play? Brainstem Antenna? Yeah, he played Brainstem Antenna on Charette. That's fine. Because we can actually play Murmuk. No, we can't. That doesn't work anymore. He's probably just going to get... Well, hold on. He might have played into a bait and switch. We'll let him keep reaping. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic here. Then he played Key Abduction. Okay. See, the problem with doing it in that sequence, though, is that you've... Well, I guess it works, but the downside to doing that is now what he's done is he's opened himself up into a pretty big bait and switch, which I think is right. So we bait and switch to 7. Oh, I guess he doesn't actually even... Well, that works out okay for him. So now we can't actually keep him off a key next turn. So now it might be better because the best case scenario, we bait and switch. So it gets us to 7 apiece, and then I can steal 1 more. So that doesn't do it. So I think what we want to do is we want to play Witch of the Eye protected. We want to play Mermook. Make him pay for the key, but then if he runs up something next turn, this is like our Hail Mary. We really need to get... The problem is that we cannot get within threatening distance of... We can't get to check. If I call Mars, that doesn't... Well, no, that doesn't do enough. Yeah, see, we just got really... These draws are pretty unlucky for us. I'm sure we've made some mistakes here, but the draws are pretty unlucky for us. And the reason why is because you really want to have... I mean, we can reap Nature's Call on the reap is pretty good. Key Charge on the reap is pretty good. So I think we just have to go for it and put out all the untamed creatures here. Put the Witch of the Eye under cover. Play a Word of Balance. Is it worth it to kill the Zizix? Because he can Crystal Hive, reap next turn, and we're in a world of trouble. So I think we want to kill the Zizix. Okay. So this is nice because we're going to be able, unless he does something that removes this from board, we're going to be able to bait and switch and steal next turn, although if he gets to like 6, that's going to be a problem. We could still do it, but it's just not that effective. It's very unfortunate that we couldn't get the check last turn. We really need him to give us a turn that we are not forced to be in denial right now. Like, we're not forced to be in active amber denial or lose situation. Like, we really need to turn off. So he's going to play that to kill that. Okay. Oh, and he gets all the Hand of Dis at the end of the game when they're useful. See, this is the problem with this deck, right? Like, with playing this deck in Adaptive, and maybe why I'm kind of learning throughout playing this league that this deck is not a good choice, because when you get a deck like this and it draws super bad for you, and then it draws very well for him, or at least significantly above average, then you're in a position where you're kind of, right, okay, where that happens. So I think we want to, it's really unfortunate, but I think we're going to have to discard Bait and Switch next turn, unless he does something. Oh, no, actually, Bait and Switch is fine now. It's still not amazing, but it'll do a thing. That's just, this is just gross. Like, just the fact that he did it. We thought we got lucky because he didn't have Key Abduction last turn, and he had Key Abduction. And he played it in a sequence that I don't know that's correct. I gotta go back and look at the replay. If it's wrong, it's not wrong by a lot. But he played it in an interesting sequence. Then he plays Key Abduction, and yeah, I think we got hosed. I think we just got hosed on deals. Now I kind of want him to Crystal Hive Reap here because, well, that's interesting. Interesting. Okay. Oh, interesting. He's going to play Control the Weak. What's he going to force me onto? Mars? Mars is right if he chooses that, because I can't get rid of the Ember Imp and Mars. We'll see if he finds that play. Because if he chooses Untamed, I can Reap with a Witch of the Eye, get Nature's Call, and pop that back to hand. Yeah, so it's just unfortunate. Now, the one good thing is that I am not currently a check. So, oh, he isn't, rather. So I can do a handful of things. Like I can play Dominator on the left to protect the Witch of the Eye. I can play Jammer Pack on Dominator. I can play... That's all I can play. Yeah, I think I want to discard this anyway. He's likely to kill this, so that's just really just a stall. So we're just going to discard Mars cards. We don't want to call Mars next turn. So what we really want to do is call Shadows, but the problem is you got these two Succubus into play. So you got all the pieces at exactly the right time. Exactly the right time. That's just that sometimes when you're in these matchups, you just lose. You just lose, and there's really not a single dispositive thing. There are a lot of things you could do differently. I don't know that there's a single thing we could have done differently with the manner in which both decks drew this game that would have changed what's likely to be the eventual outcome of this game. I'm sure there are things we could have done differently that would have improved our position marginally. But I just don't know that there's ever anything different that we could have done, because he's just going to just wreck a whole bunch of stuff, basically. How did he just... Oh, right, because he has exactly Hand of Dis again. Because that's... Oh, this is so gross. Well, it happens. So we're probably going to get to buy ourselves one more turn here, because we're going to be able to do bait and switch off the top, then... Or just... Yeah, bait and switch, then Relentless Whippers to the Imp, then steal one, but we're still only going to be drawing like a handful of cards. It's just, it's extremely unfortunate that this is the scenario. So, see again, if we had had good draws, this Grasping Vines would not be on the very last turn that we're going to get a chance to play in hand when we can't even play it anyway. We're going to have to go into this situation here in order to have any chance, although I think we're probably just dead here. He can play Mind Lock and take Dominator, which is kind of interesting, but I can get it back with this if he does that. Oh, or you just play Scrambler Storm. Sure. Why not? Can he get to 6? Well, if he gets to 6, I can use this. But since I can't play any actions, I almost have to call Untamed, do Grasping Vines, and then... Oh, we did get to 6. Okay. So I can steal... I mean, I just call Untamed. I steal 1. I did get to 2 keys. I can't play Grasping Vines. I have to discard it because I'm not calling Untamed next turn. Oh well. I'll watch this back later. I'm sure there are some places that I could have done something differently. I strongly suspect, at least in this matchup, I strongly suspect there's absolutely nothing I could have done that would have changed any of this. There's just no way that he has Scrambler Storm exactly on time. He has all of these cards exactly on time when I can't play Mars, and he has Control the Weak exactly on time. He has Mind Lock exactly on time. I lost all of these cards exactly what I was supposed to. I never got the Fertility Chant. I never got a Snack Lifter, which I could have still... I mean, this is just... The EMP Blast would be absolute gas right now if I had that in hand. It would kill all the artifacts. It would stun half his board. It would just... It's just like, these are just things that happen, you know? And this is part of, to be honest and be reflective, as I'm getting my face smashed in here, this is kind of something that I've been working on a lot recently, and I encourage all of you out there to work on if you play this game, or really any game that has some level of variance or luck involved, is that you kind of have to reflect and understand that this is not a thing that you can really control. And I'll go back and, like I said, I'll go back and look at all the things that I've done right and I've done wrong, and I'm positive I've done some things that might be objectively wrong, or certainly are not premium choices. But there's virtually, I really don't know that there's anything we could have done when he draws those cards in this sequence and I draw these cards in this sequence. Like, I can kill a whole bunch of his board, but I should have been, like, I really needed to do it several turns ago, right? Many, many, many turns ago. So I just have to play. I mean, even doing this is going to kill off, like, everything, and it just doesn't. So I can get the Dominator on the right. I can remove the stun. I can play Squawker. I mean, I can't even. It doesn't even matter. Like, I can play Squawker to unstun this. I can kill Snudge. It's unfortunate because I have a Jammer Pack, but there are no outs there, because if I wouldn't get Dominator back with the Jammer Pack unless I could kill the Mind Lock. I can't kill the Mind Lock unless I also kill my guy that had an Amber captured here. So it literally just doesn't matter. Like, nothing matters. Just literally doesn't matter. So, you know, I mean, it's extremely unfortunate, because I don't have any conception of course, there are the incomplete bets. So I just commented this to my opponent, but it's kind of funny because in an adaptive, part of the reason I really like this tournament that we're running, and I say we because I'm a member of Team SAS, and Team SAS is putting on this tournament. We put on all sorts of tournaments all the time, and they're really, you know, I like doing the different. Sorry, my mic cord is caught. I like doing the different types of tournaments we do, and just a second. Let me say. Let me congratulate my opponent. Okay, so so that is, I mean, it's just one of those things that happens, right? I mean, because you see all the cards in this deck, and you saw as we were playing the cards that he had that were extremely useful. Like, he made extremely good use of Grasping Vines in his matchup. I mean, you know, he never played EMP Blast when he was playing the deck. Which is fair, so neither one of us played it. If I had EMP Blast anywhere in, like, the turn 4 to 7 or 8 range and could blow all those artifacts off the board that he had, I'd be in and stun Hall's Mars creatures, I'd be in a dominant position. I'd just be, sorry, the glasses are fucked. I'd be in an absolutely dominant position, but it never happened. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back and look at it. Maybe I did something wrong that made a huge difference. I don't know. The only thing I can think of is maybe I don't mulligan the opening hand, but I talked about why I did that because I think that I absolutely have to mulligan the opening hand. And Fertility Chant is good, but in that opening hand, I just don't know that it's like jumping out to 4 Amber lead is not, with the follow-ups that I had, which were not that impressive. It just is what it is, right? And it's just not, it's not good enough. So, but going back to what I was saying earlier about the Adaptive League, this is kind of a very funny thing, and I was joking with some of the other people I was talking to the other day that I'm currently going for the record because in Adaptive Leagues, like I said, you didn't actually get to see an adaptive match here today that went 3 games. You just saw a 2-game adaptive match where, you know, different decks won, and so one person won, and that person, unfortunately for me, was my opponent, but it happens. But you didn't get to see the chain bidding process. What would have happened is, let's say I had won this game with Hate Bolt, right, with this deck. What would have happened is he would have started the bidding for game 3 as to what he would bid on this. So he would bid, say, 0 chains on Hate Bolt. And I would say, okay, I'll play Hate Bolt and take 1 chain. And he would say, well, that's fine. You play it with 1 chain, and I'll play Lacey, which was the deck that I brought. Or he would say, I'll bid 2 chains. And it would continue until someone decided to stop bidding chains. And at that point in time, whoever stopped bidding chains and had the highest bid would have, and you could jump bids if you want, but that usually doesn't make a lot of strategic sense to do it that way, unless you're getting into like advanced psychology or whatever, but there's no real point in doing that at this level. So whoever got the highest bid would play Hate Bolt, and the other person would play my deck, would play Lacey, right? And then but you would start the game with that many chains. And so that's a very fascinating, interesting dynamic. And what I was joking with my opponent about earlier was I have played 5 games in this, no, 4 games, excuse me. Yeah, 4 games in this tournament, and I have not gotten to game 3 once. I have won 2 games, and I have lost 2 games, but I've not gotten to game 3 once. So I'm hoping the next time I broadcast one of these, we will actually get to a game 3, and you'll be able to see some of that process, and kind of I can talk you through some of my decision-making criteria, just kind of for the purpose of going through the motions. If for some reason, let's see, so the way, I don't know how I would have pulled out the win there, but let's say roll back 3 turns before the end, I top deck EMP Blast, right? And I'm able to kill all the artifacts and wipe his board and stun his creatures, and then I just wear him down, and then I draw the Untamed cards I needed, right? I draw Fertility Chant, and he can't kill, you know, he doesn't kill my Witch of the Eye, and I reap, and I key charge, and I key cheat, and that's how I win, right? So I win through some mechanism like that, like the things you would expect this deck to do. When that happens, I then would have to decide how much, I mean, he would probably start out by bidding 0 or 1 on Hate Bolt, and I'd have to decide how far up the chain I want to go to Hate Bolt. And this is, again, kind of the interesting thing about this matchup, is that Lacey can straight up win this matchup a lot. Like, I don't know that it wins a majority of the time in this matchup. I didn't bring Lacey because it was the best deck I own. I brought it because I thought it was one of the more fascinating things to play in this format. But here, I think probably what I would do is I would not bid a great deal of chains. I think I might go up to like 3 or 4 in that range. The reason I wouldn't bid a lot of chains, and keep in mind, remember, this is in the scenario where even I had just won with Hate Bolt. The reason I wouldn't bid a lot of chains is because, let's say Hate Bolt only has a 60 to 40% advantage. I have no idea if that's accurate. But let's say that's kind of my instinct. If I thought about it more, I might change those numbers. But let's say that's what it is. Let's say 60% of the time you win, the Hate Bolt wins this matchup, and 40% of the time Lacey wins this matchup. Well, the 40% of the time that Lacey wins the matchup is usually going to be because Lacey gets the cards it wants. If you give both decks the best possible draw, I'm relatively certain that Lacey wins this matchup 9 times out of 10. Now, but that's giving both decks the cards you want to draw. Like, literally, you pick the cards out of the deck in the order you set the deck. Like, Lacey wins that matchup because it combos off much quicker than this deck does, I think. This deck doesn't combo, but it has one key cheat possibility in Untamed. It's got 2 key cheats, 2 cards that key cheat. But it's, that's the only way it can forge out of turn. So maybe not 9 times, but I think Lacey wins. If you could pick the cards, I think Lacey probably wins 7.5, 8 times. Let's say 8 times. But you can't do that, obviously. So the question is, how much are you willing to pay for a 20% advantage? And again, that's on average, right? A 20% advantage on average. How much are you willing to pay? How much equity in terms of chains? And I don't know that in that sort of scenario you want to be paying a lot of chains. And the other reason why is because this deck is not a deck that has a large draw factor. So there's and I will make videos later where I discuss kind of in greater detail what the metrics are. This is all on the Decks of Keyforge site that my friend Nathan created and runs, and he's a member of our team as well. And so there are a lot of metrics on this site. For analyzing decks, one of the metrics is deck manipulation control, and what that basically means is it's the measure of how quickly the deck can cycle through itself, right? So does it have cards that will draw extra cards? Does it, like something like a library access time traveler or like that sort of stuff? Those are usually always going to have a high D value, right? A high deck manipulation control value. So if the deck manipulation control value is high, and that's drawing cards, and there's also, to a lesser extent, some consideration in there about your disruption of the opponent's hand, right? So if you have lots of cards that were, like if you had several different cards that required them to discard cards, that would add a little bit to that. But this is usually mostly about how fast you could cycle through your deck. So if the deck manipulation control quotient, if the number, the rating, if that's low, then a lot of times if you put chains on a deck like that, and it's not a combo deck, right? It's not a deck that you can set up for several turns and then go off very quickly, and it doesn't really matter how many cards you have in hand. And even most of those combo decks do care about how many cards you have in hand. But if it's not one of those, if it's just like this, it's got some key cheats, but it's pretty straightforward. It wins by overall power. Right? It's got a 90 sass, and it's got good synergy. It wins by overall power. But it can't cycle through itself quickly. Then the chains matter a lot more. If you had a deck that had, like Lacey, for example, like Lacey's a very good counterexample of this, right? Lacey has a 22.5 D quotient, right? A 22.5 deck manipulation quotient. And the reason for that is because of cards like Battle Fleet that draw a bunch of cards, and you have 2 lab works that contribute a lot to that. You have a phase shift, which lets you dump extra cards out of hand during your turn. You have a Library of the Damned, which archives cards. Like 22.5 is an enormous number in deck manipulation. Like you could cycle through the deck fairly quickly, unless you're incredibly unlikely. So the reality of the situation is, and say hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
All right, so that's Hi, Ben. Hi, Ben is my roommate. He's going by Hi, Ben today. But we just finished this adaptive match, and I'm just about done, but I was just explaining my thought process.
Yeah.
Yet another adaptive match where I did not have 3 games.
Huh.
We went 0-2. We played Lacey. This is the deck I showed you the other day with the 2 Battle Fleets Key Abduction.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible draw, or at least significantly sub-average. I don't know exactly where the percentage of draw was for us. Game 1, we played it. We got kind of like run over by this deck, which is pretty good. It's got a higher sass. It's got a bunch of key cheats and Untamed, and it's got like these Shadow Selves and a bunch of other things.
It's got hate bolts too.
It does. It's got lots of hate bolts.
It's got one big hate bolt.
It's got a large extreme hate bolt. I don't know what that stands for, and he's in a dicey throne room. You never want to be in the dicey throne room, Ben?
Yeah, you want to be in the...
You want to be in the throne room that's very safe, so you just collect all the valuables.
You want to be in the stable throne room.
That's right. So we got a little bit busted with bad draws this turn, and then we couldn't really we had to try to do the combo too early. When we couldn't combo off, we just draw a bunch of cards, and then he had all the answers. And then game 2, when he was playing this, he was able to archive a bunch of cards. It looked like he was playing in such a manner that he didn't have the combo, but then he pulls all the cards into hand, plays the combo off, and like gets a key and a half basically from the combo, and then all the cards I needed were in the last to answer. Like he has an EMP Blast, which kills all the artifacts and stuff like that, but they were all in the bottom 6 cards a deck. Like I never saw it. I drew him as the game ended, so that was nice. But you know, but it happens. He played well, obviously, but like it's just one of those things where it's a variable. But I was just explaining how one of the metrics in SAS in the ratings is this deck manipulation control, which is how quickly you cycle through the deck. Like, and I was talking about what would happen if I was bidding chains. Like if I had won the second match, drawn a couple of those key cards when I needed, how many chains would I be willing to bid up Hate Bolt to? And the answer, I think, is not that much, because I think it's maybe only like a 60-40 favorite in this matchup, and it only has a 5.5 deck manipulation control because there's not a lot of stuff that draws cards here. So if you chain yourself with a deck that has a low D quotient, right, that has a low deck manipulation control quotient, it affects you a lot more, whereas versus in Lacey, yeah, Lacey is in some senses a combo deck, but it has all of these cards that allow you to empty hand a lot quicker, right? To phase shift, to dump an extra card out of hand, to lab work, to archive a card. It is sloppy lab work, which archives and discards a card. Ironically, I prefer sloppy lab work to lab work, not in Science, but in Keyforge. You know, and it's got Battle Fleet and other stuff like that. So
I mean, I've played Magic as a blue player, and I
yes,
understand the importance
I understand
of
it.
library manipulation and drawing extra cards.
Right,
and filtering.
Right, and as a result, I'm duty bound to murder you. Just any opportunity I have. So, you know, just be on the lookout for that. I always hated playing against control whenever I play Magic, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, so he just drew the things he wanted. But Lacey, you'd be much if Lacey was a significant favorite in this matchup, like if he brought a worse deck that was more gimmicky, that like was not overall this level of quality, and say it was like Lacey was like a 70-40 favorite, 70-30 favorite. I can do math. You might be willing to take a lot more chains on this deck because you are going to be able to dump stuff and archive stuff a lot quicker and use stuff off houses a lot quicker than he is. So I think the max chains I would have gone was either 4 or 5. My instinct is 4, because I would have been betting that I think Lacey has a reasonable enough chance of winning, and I'm not willing to play Hate Bolt with like 5 chains on it. Maybe I'll ask him later about how many chains he would have taken if I would have won game 2. So that I think is it for our broadcast today. I will tell you that I'm hoping that to broadcast more of these adaptive matchups, and I'm really hoping that some of the adaptive matchups you'll actually see the adaptive part, or at least the chain bidding at the end. We'll see. We're 4 games into a 12. I think it's 12. I think it's a 12 game. Yeah, the league is 15 rounds. So we are 4 rounds in, and we have not had a single game 3 yet, good or bad. So we'll see. You never know. But until then, stay tuned. I'm going to be broadcasting Keyforge on a regular basis. I'll probably get a schedule out soon. I'm still determining that, but hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I didn't complain too much about the draws. I try not to be too much of a bad beat story whenever I'm running bad, but you know, sometimes emotions get to you, and that happens to all of us.
And I'll be here to make fun of him occasionally.
I mean, this is what he does anyway, so such is life. Anyway, catch you later.